Welcome to the March 6, 2023 meeting of the Lake Oswego Development Review Commission. Kat, would you please call the roll of commissioners present?
Arthur,
Here.
Smith,
Here.
Poinsett,
Here.
Sangre,
Here.
Lyons,
Here.
Deuce.
Here. Great, we have a quorum and the meeting will come to order. I want to thank our Lake Oswego professional and administrative staff for their agility and responsiveness in postponing our February 22nd meeting when we had the sudden onset of a winter snowstorm. And I do want to express appreciation to Vice Chair Kirk Smith for his leadership of the March 1st special meeting when I had technical difficulties signing in. Thank you very much, Kirk. And at this point, I want to depart briefly from our agenda and welcome and invite our City Council liaison to come forward and give a report. Good evening, we're glad you're here. Please introduce yourself and let us know what you have been doing on the City Council. Welcome.
Liaison, there we go, for the Development Review Commission. So I thought I would sort of give you a rundown of what's happened in the last couple months, though you probably know a lot of it. We began in January with swearing Ali Afghan and myself in. And then that very first meeting, we did lots and lots of annexations. We also made our council liaison and committee assignments for 2023. And we moved to authorize the Lake Oswego Recreation Aquatic Center contract award. So that went to Triplet Wellman in the amount of $36,515,587. And then at the next meeting, we created a library visioning committee, which is happening now. We're pretty excited about that. We went over our fourth quarter update for our goals. We approved appointments to the Library Visioning Committee. And we looked at Ordinance 2909, which amends our code for clarifying and updating various provisions to streamline, I guess, what we all do, what you do. Then we vacated a portion of Hazel Road up by the high school. And then we had a type 2 tree removal application on D Avenue, which was denied. That was an appeal, so you guys are attuned to that. Then in February, we awarded a public improvement contract for Blue Heron 2 trunk sanitary sewer project. We awarded a public improvement contract for construction of the annual water rehabilitation project. And we worked on Ordinance 2909, which was amending LOC Chapter 50 for purpose of clarifying and updating various provisions and adopting findings. Then we made an appointment to the DEI Advisory Board. We made an appointment to the Ad Hoc Housing Production Strategy Task Force. We adopted our 2023 Preferred Future Goals and Initiatives. Then we worked on Ordinance 2891, which has to do with nonconforming uses, structures, lots, and site features, and decided that we would pass that, but we reduced the number of exceptions to just publicly owned properties and properties with significant trees. We had a great update from the fire department and a really complete pavement management update. Then at our most recent meeting, we authorized an agreement with the Lake Oswego Rowing Club Foundation. We authorized payment to the EPA for the WIFIA program for the wastewater treatment facility project, and that's a financing facility. We got an update on the 2023 legislative session priorities, and we officially adopted the nonconforming uses code. We also looked at our 2023 work plans and we approved the draft for that. And then we had a very comprehensive housing needs analysis update and housing production strategy information session. So that's what we've been doing for the last 2 months. And tomorrow we will hear the appeal for the Lake Oswego School District bus barns. So,
Well, thank you
guys.
for that report. You've been
Thank you.
busy. Let me just ask, Commissioners, are there any questions of Councilor Corrigan? You mentioned a visioning effort for the library. Do you anticipate that may include a new facility recommendation?
I would guess it probably will. I think it's wide open, and I think we're just getting as much input as we can. So whatever we get back, and we'll work with it. We're pretty excited about it, so.
Great. Well, we appreciate you being here tonight and look forward to working with you as our City Council liaison to the DRC.
Thank you very much.
We will now move into a public hearing on LU 22-0047. This is a request for a development review permit for a new mixed-use building with about 3,400 square feet of commercial office space and 8 residential units in the West Lake Grove Design District using the clear and objective housing track. The applicant is also requesting the removal of 3 trees to accommodate site improvements. This site is located at 16607 and 16667 Boones Ferry Road, and our staff coordinator this evening is Senior Planner Johanna Hasty. City Attorney Boone, would you like to lead us into the hearing?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The public hearing process will be as follows. First, there'll be a presentation by staff, then testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, then testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimony by parties opposed to the application, and finally testimony by those neither for nor against the application. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person except to the applicant, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Those time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission. Testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of or which are part of the presentation by a person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It is assumed that persons are testifying on their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they are representing. After testimony in favor, opposed, and neither for nor against, in the applicant's rebuttal, up to 5 minutes. Then commission deliberation, including a statement to the applicant by the commission of any proposed conditions of approval different than contained in the staff report in the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following the commission deliberation. As stated in the public notice, the deadline for submission of any written materials was noon today. No written materials may be submitted to the commission tonight. Any person may request an opportunity to submit additional written evidence by requesting a continuation of the public hearing. This land use request is to be considered based upon the applicable criteria and standards. The staff report lists the criteria staff identified as applicable to the request. It was available online and from the planning department. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria. We ask that you specifically identify to the commission the criteria or standards you are addressing, so the commission may consider your testimony in relation to the criteria or standards. If you do not identify the criteria or standards you're addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you are testifying about and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes raising the issue to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise any constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Potential conflict of interest declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC member does not have a known present or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It is possible that a future business relationship could arise in the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally or through relatives as defined in ORS 244-020. At this point, I would ask the commission members to please declare if you've had any ex parte contacts, including a site visit, if you have any bias on the application, any financial conflicts of interest, and please state your business or employment.
Mr. Sangre?
My name is Dwight Sangre. I'm a retired civil engineer. I am aware of this project site by driving past it. I have not been on the site. I have no business or economic relationship to any of the parties involved here, and so feel that I have no bias or conflict of interest. I have had no ex parte discussions that relate to this project.
Thank you. Commissioner Poinsett?
My name is Bruce Poinsett. I'm a semi-retired construction safety consultant. I have driven by the site. I've had no contact, no conflicts. Don't anticipate any conflicts. No biases, nothing.
Thank you. I'm Randy Arthur. I'm a civil litigation attorney with the Portland, Oregon office of Bullivan Hauser Bailey. Some of the names involved in this application were presented to me in advance, and I did an informal conflicts check at my office and found no potential or actual conflicts. I have no financial interest in this project and no disqualifying bias. I have not made a site visit. Several years ago, I did purchase a condominium through Dwight Schwab in the Northwest Portland Forest Heights area, and built by an entity he was a member of. Consider him a friendly acquaintance. And I did note that Lemoyne Eiler may have been listed as providing architectural services for this, and I did have a relationship with Lemoyne Eiler many years ago when I was president of the Forest Heights Homeowners Association, and he was heading up the architectural review committee. And that is all I have to disclose. Vice Chair Kirk Smith.
Hello, my name is Kirk Smith. I'm a real estate and land use attorney with the law firm of Buchalter. The city provided me with a number of names involved in these two matter, in this matter, and I ran them through Buchalter's conflict system, and we do not have any conflicts with the names that were provided me. I have not visited the site, but I basically drive by it almost daily as part of my commute. I did not make a specific site visit, so I'm aware of the site, but not the specifics of the site itself. I have no other ex parte contacts, no disqualifying bias, and no additional financial conflicts of interest.
I'm John Dews. I am an architect. I do drive by the site also frequently as part of my commute, but I have not made any specific visits to the site for this project. I have no ex parte contacts, no bias, nor do I have any financial conflict.
My name is Tim Lyons. I am an attorney with the Bend office of Best and Krieger. I did not make a site visit. I'm familiar with the location in that I drive by it basically daily. No disqualifying bias, no financial interest in the project whatsoever.
Thank you. Is there any challenge to Commissioner's right to consider the application? Hearing none, Senior Planner Joanne Hasty with the staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Boone. Senior Planner and Interim Planning Manager Johanna Hasty here tonight to present LU 22-0047 as described by the Chair. I do have 3 comments in support to add to the public record, one of which was from the Lake Forest Neighborhood Association Chair. Those have been posted online and forwarded to you for your consideration. I just also want to point out really quickly before we get started that this project went through an approval process in 2018. And where it was unanimously approved by the DRC at that time. The reason it expired was because construction hadn't begun before the required deadline. So they had to go back through this process all over again. There are no substantial changes to the design or the project at all between the 2018 approval and today. So this is a vicinity and zoning map. The site is located in the Westlake Grove Design District with frontage on Boones Ferry Road. It's a split zone site, as you can see from the close-in. It is zoned R2.5 at the rear and RMU, or residential mixed use, up front. The site abuts unincorporated residential properties to the rear and Westlake Grove designed and approved properties to the east and west. Residential and mixed use, or I should just say mixed use, to the west, southwest, and commercial to the northeast. This project, as was described, is a mixed-use project in this design district. The applicant chose to use the clear and objective housing track to get through this approval process. There are no variances allowed in this design district, and with the clear and objective housing track, all standards must be met as listed in the design district and applicable standards. Really quickly, an overview on the site. You have parking at the rear with access provided to the east and west through abutting properties. Access to Boonesfrey Road, that is, provided to the east and west through abutting properties as required in this design district. The 3 trees that are being removed are not significant, and staff approved or recommended approval as outlined in the Type 2 tree removal process. There are numerous evergreen trees being preserved as shown on with the green circles on this site. Do a quick overview of the Westlake Grove Clear and Objective Housing Tract standards. Starting looking at landscaping, you have layered informal natural landscaping that has to cover at least 40% of the site. There is a minimum 15-foot landscape screen at the rear of the property where it abuts residential, along with a 6-foot fence. And that screening is there. It's supplementing the existing trees in that area with multiple new trees and shrubs. There's an 8-foot meandering sidewalk that is connecting to existing sidewalks on either side. It is narrowed at that specific point where the applicant is preserving a tree, but ADA compliance is maintained. Vehicular connectivity is highlighted in red, and pedestrian circulation is highlighted in green there. The applicant chose the Oregon Rustic, which was one of the allowed Westlake Grove clear and objective architectural styles. That design, the proposal, does comply with the listed design elements, including asymmetrical high-quality design and materials, gable roof with dormers, deep eaves with decorative braces, multi-paned windows for residential uses on the upper stories. Exterior cladding is a mix of cedar shingles, horizontal tongue and groove siding, and stone along the base. And finally, there are 2 prominent stone chimneys, and staff did find that it was met as proposed. The Westlake Grove Clear and Objective Standards, I should say, are met as proposed. In addition to the Westlake Grove Clear and Objective Standards, there are also general clear and objective standards under LOC 50.06.001. These are focused on wall plane articulation and roof forms and primary entries and fenestration. So not to belabor the point, but all facades include the necessary projections and recessions. That's through the use of balconies, bay windows, and recessed entries. Perceived articulation is created with cladding changes and belly bands. There is the required roof form rhythm that is created through the use of the main gables and the dormer roof forms. The commercial storefront fenestration is 60%, and that is met as shown. And there is a strong tripartite division with a defined base. Base, middle, and top. And again, staff did find that the general clear and objective standards were met as proposed. I want to really quickly run through the development standards. There are 21 spaces required and 22 are proposed. 2 of the units will have advantage of tandem spaces, and there is a condition of approval to ensure that those are signs specific to a unit, so there's no confusion about somebody blocking someone else in. Full ADA compliant pedestrian circulation and connectivity is provided throughout the site from the public street into the entrances. The parking lot and street lighting complies with the applicable lighting standards. There is, between the open space and landscaping, as I noted earlier, it's a minimum 40% set aside, and that is met. All stormwater and utilities can be provided as shown or as conditioned in the staff report. The right-of-way improvements are minimal. Again, there is no new access site or access point with this site. Access is gained through the abutting properties. through a reciprocal access easement. And the only right-of-way dedication that was necessary was enough to ensure that the public sidewalk is in the right-of-way. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Staff is recommending approval as conditioned in the staff report.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, are there any questions of staff at this point before we proceed to testimony?
Thank you.
City Attorney Boone, could you comment on what weight, if any, we should give in our considerations to the fact that reportedly a substantially similar application was approved by the DRC several years ago?
I don't think it has any direct, obviously, bearing. It's not precedential. However, having said that, if there's an issue that was decided by the commission before and the code is the same, then I would encourage the commission to give a similar interpretation of the code provision. I mean, you should be consistent with your code interpretations. But with that, there may be new evidence that's presented in this application that wasn't in the others, so it's certainly not binding.
Okay, so it sounds like we just need to treat this as a fresh application.
Correct. But again, to the extent you had a prior interpretation, which I don't think there was anything,
So,
I don't recall seeing the findings and conclusions or on the
there was
project.
anything unique on this one that required a commission interpretation. So, but if there were, you would follow it. Unless you
right.
say, why not?
I would just quickly note that the two codes that did change were stormwater management regulations. And those are obviously managed by the city engineer, and Todd Knepper recommended the conditions of approval that are outlined in the report. And then also the Westlake Grove tree mitigation standards changed. Instead of a replacement of caliper inches lost, it's a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 ratio if the tree is considered significant, which none of these were. So those were the two changes in my staff report. Other than that, it was basically just updating dates and exhibit numbers and things like that.
Well, thank you for that clarification and explanation. At this point, I'd like to proceed to the public hearing and hear from the applicant. The applicant is Schwab Holdings LLC, and I believe their representative is coming forward now. Thank you. Good evening. Could you please identify yourself? And
I don't know if that works or not. Oh, there it goes. My name is Gabe Hedrick. I'm an architect with Steelhead Architecture. We are the architect for the project. You mentioned Lemoyne Eiler before. He was helping with planning a number of years ago, but he's not currently
oh, I
involved
see.
with the
Somehow his
project.
name came up.
Yeah, no, Lemoyne isn't on the project at the moment.
Didn't mean to ignore you. Please.
Oh, it's okay.
Please proceed.
No, not a problem at all. Thank you for hearing our project this evening. Yeah, we, as stated before, we did come before you all a few years back with very similar projects. As Joanna accurately pointed out, there's been really no significant changes from the last go-around of this project to the new one. Just circumstances paused the project for a few years, a few things going on the past few years. So we're back now and ready to proceed with the project. Excited about the project and happy to answer questions as we move forward. I'm not going to add a ton of information. I think Joanna did a really good job of summarizing it. But yeah, we did choose the Oregon Rustic for the clear and objective standards. I thought it was a really appropriate look for this project. This project is a mixed-use project with office spaces on the first floor, and then kind of it's got a fairly articulated post and beam type of look to it on the first floor and the storefronts. They give a really good view of the street and meet all of the glazing requirements. While at the same time, it's also got a fair amount of stone at the bottom, which I think gives it a strong base to the project and supports that the Oregon Rustic goals and some of the requirements. Then as you go up to the second and the third floor, you're into the units themselves, which are actually kind of loft-style units. So the doors to the units themselves are on the second floor, and then the units have an open loft above them with internal stairs within the units themselves. So a lot of the dormers that you're seeing, the gable dormers and the shed dormers that are coming off the building are actually those loft spaces, volumes on the interior. So that style of articulation on the roof forms really does support the floor plan. They work well together, and I think was a good solution that met the requirements. It is, as you can see, quite asymmetrical, both on the front facade where there's the big gable dormer with the asymmetrical lengths to each side of them on the left side of the facade. And then when you come back to the rear of the building where the parking lot is, again, there's a asymmetrical gable dormer that's more in the middle of the building at that point, but it is kind of balanced between the long leg on the left and then there's a shed dormer on the right. So while there's a lot of articulation going on, I think the balance of the building is working out well and really meets the standards and the goals of the clear and objective standards. As stated, there are all of the parking and all of the car circulation is all in the back, so there's nothing to be seen from the front. Pedestrian circulation was important to us in this area. The residents, you can actually see it on the bottom slide there, the rear, you can actually see on the left side, there's a pedestrian walkway that goes through on the east side of the building that connects to both the residential lobby back there, but also connects, it was important to us to have some common space right outside of that residential lobby that people could gather in nice weather, and actually not as nice weather, it is covered in places. And then also a direct connection for pedestrians straight out to Boone's Ferry as well. We want to have this be just a drive-in, drive-out kind of building. It is encouraged for pedestrians there's a lot to do there, a lot of places to walk. So that's kind of what's going on the left side of that rear image. On the top image, on the right side of the building, the commercial spaces really are on the fronting on the street side of the building. So there's kind of a stone wall that you see kind of on the right side of that top front elevation. That right behind it, again, is an exterior space that is intended a little bit for the commercial tenant, whoever they may be eventually, to have some outdoor space, and then also is kind of that pass-through for pedestrians from the residential lobby as well. Yeah, I think the bullet notes that are up there are pretty clear. Really, from the last go-around, the only thing that changed maybe is at one point we had a green roof over portion of that walkway that now is a deck rather than a green roof. But beyond that, it's actually very much like it was, and happy to answer any questions about it at this point.
Well, thank you for that presentation. Commissioners, are there questions at this point? Well, I think you've made a good presentation. We apparently have no questions. So do you have anything else you'd like to say in your remaining time?
No, I'd be happy to move on.
All right, well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Okay.
Do we have anyone wishing to testify on this matter? Either in person or by remote web-based connection? Private, okay. Alexander Bersani, I may have mispronounced that. Alexander, are you here? Mr. Bersani does not appear to be here. Is there anyone, pardon? Is there anyone wishing to testify in favor of the application? Is there anyone wishing to testify in opposition to the application? Is there anyone wishing to testify who's neither opposed nor in favor of the application? Very good. Now it's time for rebuttal, perhaps.
Well, there wouldn't be any rebuttal since there was no testimony, additional testimony. So prior to closing the public hearing, any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence. If request is made, the public hearing would be held either on a date certain, not less than 7 days later, or the record shall remain open for the 7 days after the hearing to enable additional written evidence or testimony to be submitted, and the commission would establish the period for any rebuttal of written evidence to be submitted. Is there any such request for additional evidence? Hearing none, does the applicant, unless waived by the applicant, the commission would allow the applicant 7 days after the record is closed, all the parties to submit final written argument in support of the application. The information be considered part of the record but would not include any new evidence. Does the applicant wish to submit final written argument, which would delay the commission's deliberation? I see a shake of head no, so you may proceed with deliberation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, are there any comments or thoughts at this point as we head into deliberations? Any questions to discuss among ourselves?
I would just say I appreciate staff's clarity and the comprehensive nature of the report. Made it easier to review this project, and I'll be voting to approve the request.
Thank you for that comment, Commissioner Lyons. Any other comments or deliberations? Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's take a vote then. Please call the roll.
Arthur?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Poinsett?
Yes.
Sangre?
Yes.
Lyons?
Yes.
Booth?
Yes.
6-0.
Very good. The application is approved. I think it's a very attractive building from the schematics, so we'll look forward to having it constructed.
And this was a tentative decision, written findings brought back to the commission on March the 20th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That concludes the hearing on LU 22-0047. Now we will proceed to LU 22-0029. The applicant requests a modification to an approved conditional use permit, LU 12-0056, to increase student enrollment from 50 to 150 students and a resource protection or an RP district stream corridor delineation. The site is located at 14790 Boones Ferry Road, and our staff coordinator this evening is Senior Planner Evan Franstead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The public hearing process, the presentation by staff, followed by testimony by the applicant up to 20 minutes, testimony by parties in support of the application, followed by testimony by parties opposed to the application, and finally, neither for nor against the application. Individuals will be allowed up to 5 minutes. Any person in attendance may cede his or her time for testimony to another person except to the applicant, but in no case shall any person's testimony be increased to greater than 10 minutes. Recognized neighborhood associations, homeowner associations, government or government agencies, or other incorporated public interest organizations will be allowed up to 10 minutes. Those time limits do not include time spent responding to questions from the commission. Testimony by attorneys, representatives, and witnesses on behalf of or which are part of the presentation by a person shall be counted within that person's time limit. It is assumed the person is testifying on their own behalf unless they expressly identify the recognized neighborhood association, homeowner association, government or government agency, or other incorporated public interest organization they are representing. After testifying in favor, opposed, and neither for nor against, then the applicant's rebuttal will occur up to 5 minutes. Then following that would be commission deliberation, including a statement to the applicant by the commission of any proposed conditions of approval different than contained in the staff report, and the applicant's response to the commission's conditions of approval proposed following commission deliberation. As stated in the public notice, the deadline for submission of written materials was noon today. No written materials may be submitted to the commission tonight. Any person may request an opportunity to present additional evidence by requesting a continuation of the public hearing. This land use request is to be considered based on the applicable criteria and standards, which was identified in the staff report and was available online and from the planning department. Testimony and evidence must be directed towards the applicable criteria. Please specifically identify to the commission the criteria or standards you're addressing so the commission may consider the testimony in relation to the criteria or standards. If you do not identify the criteria or standards you're addressing, the commission is not obliged to guess which standards or criteria you're addressing, you're testifying about, and may not consider your testimony in its decision. Failure to raise an issue accompanied by statements or evidence sufficient to afford the commission and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issue precludes raising the issue to the City Council and the Oregon Land Use Board of Appeals based on that issue. The failure of the applicant to raise any constitutional or other issues relating to proposed conditions of approval with sufficient specificity to allow the commission to respond to the issue precludes an action for damages in circuit court. Again, a potential conflict of interest declared on behalf of each of the DRC members to the extent of their business or employment, which each will identify. Unless declared otherwise, the respective DRC member does not have a known present or anticipated future business relationship with the project or the applicant. It's possible that a future business relationship could arise the initiation, design, construction, or maintenance of the project through either the employment or business of the DRC member personally or through a relative as defined in ORS 244-020. Again, at this point, I would ask the commission members to please declare if you've had any ex parte contacts, including a site visit, if you have any bias on the application, financial conflicts of interest, and please state your business or employment. Commissioner Sangri.
My name is Dwight Sangri. I'm a retired civil engineer. I do not feel that I have any conflict of interest or bias related to this project. However, I have two items that I would like to disclose. Number one is that I'm quite familiar with the site because I was involved in an environmental reclamation project on Springbrook Creek that included this site. That project was sponsored and coordinated by the Oswego Lake Watershed Council. The second disclosure I'd like to make is that some time in the past, I was invited to come to a fundraising event for the school. And in that capacity, I made a minor contribution in support of the school at that time. Independent of those two, I have no business or other relationship. I've had no recent ex parte discussion, and I would ask the chair, I would ask the city attorney and my colleagues if any of you feel that my relationship to this site in the past represents a potential conflict, then please let me know and I will recuse myself from voting. But I do not feel that I have a bias or a conflict of interest.
Mr. Sangre, if I may follow up on that, the commission doesn't judge whether or not you have a bias or not, so it's strictly you. And the question is, notwithstanding your prior relations, as you've disclosed them, is there any reason where you feel you would not be able to apply the evidence presented tonight to the criteria and make a decision based solely upon the evidence and the criteria?
There is no reason why I cannot act in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for those disclosures, Commissioner Sangri. I'm sure we will accept your declaration of no bias. Commissioner Poinsett?
Yep, my name is Bruce Poinsett. I'm a semi-retired construction safety consultant. Only relation to the site is I passed it probably many times a week. Other than that, I have no financial interest, no ex parte contact, no conflicts.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm Randy Arthur. I'm a civil litigation attorney with the Bullivan Bailey Law Firm in Portland. I have not made a site visit. I've had no ex parte contacts. I have no financial interest or disqualifying bias. I was given a list of names associated with the project and did not to run through my law firm's conflict system and had no conflicts. Thank you. Vice Chair Smith.
My name is Kirk Smith. I am a real estate and land use attorney with the law firm of Buckhalter. The city provided me with a list of parties involved with this matter, and I ran them through our conflict system and determined that I do not have any conflicts. I have not visited the site specifically, but this is the other part of my commute in which I pass by the site almost daily. So I'm very familiar with at least the site from the street, but I've not made a specific visit to the site. I have no other ex parte contacts, no disqualifying bias, and no additional financial conflicts of interest.
Thank you. Commissioner Dews.
Yes, I'm John Dews, an architect, and I do drive by the site frequently, but I have made no formal site visit. I have no ex parte contacts, nor bias, or any financial conflict of interest.
Thank you. Commissioner Lyons?
My name is Tim Lyons. I am an attorney with the law firm Best and Krieger. I've had no ex parte contacts, nor have I visited the site, though like others, I drive by it regularly, and I have no disqualifying bias or financial interest in this project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any challenge to a commissioner's right to consider the application? Hearing none, Senior Planner Evan Franstead with the staff report, please.
Thank you, Mr. Boone, and members of the commission. Before I begin my summary of the staff report, I'd like to discuss there's two staff memos. One was published on February 22nd that lists the new testimony that was received since the publication of the staff report on February 10th. Those exhibits are G100 through G110, and in opposition, G200 through G203. And the memo dated today lists other additional evidence that was submitted. Applicant's submittal, that's exhibit F14, is the applicant's traffic engineering response that was submitted today. In support, we received G111 and G112, and in opposition, G204. Both of those memos provide staff analysis of the issues raised. And for the staff report, the site is approximately 3.5 acres with frontage along Boones Ferry Road and Twin Fir. It's outlined there in blue. There's 2 tax lots. The site is zoned R10. To the north are budding properties. Budding property is a city-owned property, zone P&A, park and natural area. It's an open space tract that was developed as part of the subdivision up there. The abutting properties to the northeast are zoned R10, developed residential dwellings. To the south and southeast, properties are zoned R10 and developed with residential dwellings. To the west, properties across Boones Ferry Road are zoned R3 and developed with residential dwellings. Here's an aerial photo of the site. The site is developed with an existing building, 2 playgrounds, and a parking lot used by the International Leadership Academy and Hope Church. The existing building is approximately 14,000 square feet. The existing parking lot has 48 parking spaces. As you can see, the east area of the site is largely forested. In 2012, a conditional use permit was approved for the International Leadership Academy for 50 students. This proposal would modify that conditional use permit to increase the number of students from 50 to 150. The site slopes downward from the west to east towards Springbrook Creek, then slopes upwards towards the northeast. The site contains a Class 1 Resource Protection District with a stream corridor and wetlands associated with Springbrook Creek and a habitat benefit area for the trees. No development is proposed within our RP district except for replacement of the existing pedestrian bridge and mitigation plantings. The applicant performed a site study for the wetland and stream boundaries to determine the location of the wetlands and waterways within the RP district, as shown on this plan. The city's consulting ecologist has evaluated the applicant's materials and concludes that the RP district has accurately been delineated according to the methodologies prescribed. Per 50.01.0034, no development shall be issued for permit or land or use of land in violation of the code, unless a violation is rectified as part of the development. In September 2021, the applicant was put on notice that a playground area and associated areas had been created in a wetland and stream corridor were in violation of sensitive lands overlay districts, and the pedestrian bridge was in violation of the floodplain management area standards and the sensitive lands overlay standards. The applicant seeks to rectify the violations by removing and replacing the bridge and removing the playground equipment that includes a chain link fence, archery range, chicken coops, and disturbances on the city property to the north. And installing mitigation plantings. Condition A8 requires a final mitigation planting plan in order to rectify the violations. And here are photos of those disturbances. These photos show the encroachments into sensitive lands, as shown in the green area on the plan. The playground area, chain link fence, archery range, chicken coops will be removed. Existing bridge will be replaced. Here's the mitigation plan that they submitted. It was produced by a qualified resource professional, submitted in mitigation report that shows the disturbance areas from the playground improvements and proposed mitigation plantings. The reports detail that cited violations do not cause permanent loss of the functions of wetlands and stream corridor. The city's consulting ecologist has evaluated the applicant's materials and concludes that the applicant's professional and concurs with the applicant's professional reports. The disturbance areas of the city property to the north is approximately 4,877 square feet. The applicant is proposing to remove gravel and weed fabric and some of the wood chips, then plant 262 native shrubs, 65 native trees in areas 2 and 3 on the city property. Areas 1 and 4 are disturbance areas within the ILA site, which require 344 shrubs, 69 trees to be planted. The applicant is proposing to mitigate by controlling invasive species and replanting with 481 shrubs, 94 trees in nearby wetland and RP disturbance areas. The disturbance areas are to remain as a passive recreation area, which is allowed in the RP district. And here's a site plan on the west side of the property. It shows the applicant is proposing to restripe the parking lot, as well as add planters and construct a covered bike structure in the existing northeast paved area of the parking lot. No exterior modifications are proposed to the existing building. The applicant submitted a parking study to determine the shared parking requirement. This study details how the school and church have complementary schedules with the peak traffic and parking at different times than the other. The study found that the uses will generate a total parking demand of 39 parking spaces. The site plan shows that 46 parking spaces will be provided. The applicant's traffic study recommends implementing a one-way flow around the existing building with ingress along the eastern driveway and egress through the western driveway, as shown in this plan, this parking circulation plan. The study found that there are no queuing issues on the roadway that would be associated with the proposal. The existing driveways meet site distance standards. Here's the floor plans that show the existing building where the school is located. The proposed school attendance will use up 12 classrooms on the lower and main floors. This shows a potential use of the floors. And for the conditional use criteria. So criterion 1, the proposal does not include any exterior alterations to the existing building. The proposed site modifications include a new covered bike parking area and replacement of the existing pedestrian bridge that can meet the required dimensional standards as required with condition A1 that requires the applicant to submit a final site plan to ensure compliance. So this standard is met. For criterion 3, OLC 50.03.003.5F applies for educational institutions and daycare center uses, which requires the school to provide on-site circulation and walkways and safe loading and ingress and egress on and to the site. Ingress will be provided with the existing east driveway and egress via the west driveway. No changes to existing driveways are proposed. The site plan shows the applicant will install entrance and exit signs, paint graphic directional signs, and repaint the existing striped pedestrian walkway. The parking lot circulation plan demonstrates existing on-site circulation, provides connection to the existing pathway along Twin Fir Road. This standard is met. Criterion 3 requires the site is physically capable of accommodating the proposed use. The site is approximately 3.5 acres in size. The floor plan shows the existing building has adequate space for up to 12 classrooms to house the proposed 150 students. The applicant states that they have a good sense of the physical needs required with the increase in attendance, both inside the building and outside playgrounds, and provided a student accommodation document that details the staggered use of the playground areas. Excuse me. A submitted parking study demonstrates the required amount of parking will be 46 parking spaces in the existing parking lot. The application has shown that all the applicable standards can be met on the site, therefore demonstrating the site is physically capable of accommodating the proposal. Staff finds there is adequate space within the existing building and overall site to increase the number of students to 250. This criterion is met. For criterion 4, this requires the functional characteristics of the proposed use are such that it can be made reasonably compatible with uses in the vicinity. A conditional use is approved in the zone if impacts of its characteristics can be made so they are not greater to the other uses in the vicinity than would result in an outright permitted use of the site. The site is zoned R10, which outright permits a variety of household living residential uses and certain group institutional housing, public institutional civic uses such as group care homes, daycare, and community gardens. The question is whether the incremental impacts resulting from the increase in student population, when aggregated with existing level of impacts, can be made reasonably compatible with the uses in the vicinity. The main impacts under consideration are traffic, parking, access, lighting, noise, and operations. The traffic impact study was performed to estimate the trip generation of the proposed school enrollment increase. The traffic study was performed prior to the completion of the reconstruction of the raised median in Boones Ferry Road, just south of Twinford Road, to allow a two-stage left turn to better utilize the median as part of the Boones Ferry paving project. The traffic study states with the mitigation of the reconstruction median on Boones Ferry Road, the intersection of Boones Ferry Road and Twinford Road would operate at a level service of E or better during peak periods. All their study areas intersections were found to be operating and were projected to continue operating within the city's performance standard of level of service of E. Thank you. The city traffic engineer concurs with the applicant's traffic study and finds the intersection with or without the approval of the conditional use permit will operate at level service E, and therefore no further modifications to the intersection is required. Based on the study's review of the crash history at the study area intersections, no trends or patterns were identified that were indicative of safety concerns, and no safety-based mitigations identified related to the proposed conditional use. As previously stated, the proposal complies with the parking and access standards. There are no increased impacts with the parking lot because there is adequate queuing within the parking lot for cars to drop off and pick up students. And the parking lot is adequate capacity and will not have impacts to surrounding properties because it is approximately 130 feet from the nearest residence. For lighting and noise, the proposal will use existing parking lot and outdoor areas. No new lighting or noise generating equipment is proposed. The closest nearest residential property are over 100 feet to the southeast of the existing parking lot. The proposed increase in students at the school is not expected to create more noise than could be heard off-site than the current use on the site because the existing area of student congregation is at least 150 feet to the nearest residence. The stream corridor with existing trees provides screening between adjacent residential properties and the lighting and outdoor play areas. For operations, the school operates Monday through Friday from 7:45 to 4:30 p.m. The church operates from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Sundays with approximately 20 people, and from 6 to 9 p.m. on Wednesdays with approximately 15 people. Accordingly, the increase in student population will not be added to an existing impact to the church. The hours of operation alone are not expected to have significant impact on the surrounding uses. Staff finds that due to the existing uses of the property and sufficient distance to the adjacent uses, the timing of the traffic generated by the proposed increase to 150 students at the school, and the adequate on-site capacity to prevent backup right-of-way queuing to and from the site, the operations will be reasonably compatible with the uses in the vicinity. Condition A6 requires the applicant to record a notice of development restriction that states that a maximum of 150 students are permitted on site. As condition, criterion 4 is met. Overall, staff finds the conditional use criteria are met. In conclusion, staff recommends approval of LU 22-0029, subject to the recommended conditions.
Thank you very much for that report. Commissioners, are there any questions at this point of staff on the application or their report? Oh, Kirk Smith, please go ahead.
Sorry. I have two questions, and in looking at the report on page 19, there's a discussion about the driveway approaches that the site shall meet ADA standards. And I was curious, when is that determined? Because it wasn't clear if it was in compliance or out of compliance.
So it's unknown if it's out of compliance now. It appears that they probably are, the driveways. That's something the applicant needs to provide more information. It's based on slope of the driveways. And that is going to be required before they can operate, before they can increase the student enrollment to 150. So they'll need to improve the driveways if they are out of compliance.
So before the CUP is issued, then that's when the determination will be made? If it's in or out of compliance with ADA?
Well, in order to, it's something that needs to be determined before they can, increase enrollment to 150. I mean, the first step is to determine if it is out of compliance. If it is, then they need to improve it to meet the ADA requirements.
Okay, and then my second question was with respect to the bridge, and I'm over on pages 23 and 24 of your report, and as I understood it, is there was a wooden bridge built in the RP district that's going to be replaced, and then they're going to put in a 45-foot concrete span bridge. Is that bridge still going to be in the RP district, but it's just less of an impact than the wood bridges?
So I guess two things. So the existing bridge is wood. The clear span is going to be wood too. They both are located in the RP district. The new bridge will be located outside the floodplain boundary. As far as less impact, it does appear yes, it will have less impact. But really, there's nowhere else to put it. They can't move it off-site. It's going to be located in the RP district. So the question is, can they mitigate any impacts? And they are going to mitigate and plant new trees and shrubs in that area.
Okay, because the reason I was a little confused is on page 24, there's a reference to Exhibit F6, page 5, with respect to the bridge. And when I looked at that reference to F6, P5, I couldn't see any discussion about the bridge. So either I was misreading the report F6, or maybe it's a blown reference that I should have been looking someplace else.
Now let me go to F5, page 6.
Sorry?
Sorry, F6, page 5. So that's their mitigation report. And then page 5 talks about the functions and values of the resource. Yeah, so the reference is, so the existing bridge is sitting on concrete culverts. They're going to remove those out of the stream channel, and that will increase the functions and values of the stream corridor. That's what it's referencing.
So that's the bottom line, is that it's basically gonna get the bridge out of the floodplain, I guess. I'm not an engineer or stormwater person, but that was what I was trying to figure out is, I guess we're trying to make it better by this new bridge being out of the floodplain. Is that a fair characterization?
Well, and the functions and values of the stream corridor.
Well, I can further explain.
Can you help? Okay.
The existing bridge was built without a permit. And so it is resting on some existing concrete culverts, which are actually contributing to the scouring of when water comes through. It's actually detrimental to the resource to have these old culverts in there. So what they're going to do is remove the existing pedestrian bridge, which does not have a building permit, does not comply with structural requirements, build a bridge that does, and remove those culverts, and make sure the bridge is out of the floodplain. So it will accomplish several improvements to the resource by constructing this new bridge.
Great, thank you.
Anything else, Commissioner Smith?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I did have a question. Could you just refresh my understanding, please, of what the LOSF and LOSE traffic impact standards are?
I think that's a good question for our city engineer or traffic engineer.
I appreciate the city engineer being here this evening. Thank you. and the traffic engineer. Mr. Farley.
Good evening, Will Farley, City of Lake Oswego's traffic engineer. The LOSE standard is set by our comprehensive plan. It's a certain amount of delay for a non-signalized intersection. I'm spacing on what that delay actually is, but I believe it's about 35 seconds to 45 seconds, maybe 50. And then above that, anything with greater delay would be considered LOSF, or level of service F, which would be failing our mobility standard.
And what is the second interval you mentioned measuring, the time to, what is that measuring?
So the level of service is measuring average delay at an intersection. So over the course of the peak hour, what is the average amount in seconds that a vehicle is waiting to make a movement?
Has the city, or if you know, what is the status, if any, of the city's consideration of putting a traffic signal at that intersection of Twin Fir and Boone's Ferry?
The city is evaluating kind of where would be the best location of a signal along that corridor. We evaluated the corridor, or I believe it was Rainbow Drive back in 2016, 2017. It wasn't forecasted to meet traffic signal warrants at that time or any time before 2040. We're currently monitoring and evaluating what would be the best place and for what purpose. More likely to be more pedestrian crossing oriented than vehicle service.
But it was your assessment that there's no, having made this mitigation that raises it to an LOSE standard, there's no need for a further modification such as a traffic signal in connection with this application?
Yes, the applicant, as part of this application, we had them evaluate traffic signal warrants. We follow the best practices of when to install traffic signals, so they have to meet a specific volume or a specific crash pattern or have a certain criteria that warrants the installation of that signal. Upon the evaluation, it was not warranted for a traffic signal at this time or expected to be warranted with this proposal.
Okay, thank you very much for that explanation. Any other questions? Thank you. So at this time, I would welcome the applicant's representative to come forward to present the application, please. Thank you. Good evening. Please identify yourselves for the record.
My name is Don Wayne. I am the secretary of the board of directors of International Leadership Academy. I have a background in education, higher education, and I've been serving on the board for 4 years. Thank you, Kat, for putting that quote up. That quote will be, I'll be referring to Montaigne. I thought you'd be interested in reading that quote. International Leadership Academy is a bilingual French immersion school with children from the daycare nursery age, la crèche in French, up through 5th grade. By French immersion is meant the fact that the school day is divided into classes in which the principal language is in French and classes in which the principal language is in English. There is also a third, smaller Spanish component to the school curriculum with a full-time Spanish teacher, so in essence, ILA is a trilingual school. This is one example of ILA's forward-looking educational philosophy, a commitment to educating young children in an international perspective, including not only language training, but gaining familiarity with cultures other than their own. The ethnic diversity of our teachers is another facet of our students' multicultural experience. Over the past 2 years, we've been awarded recognition and accreditation by the French Ministry of Education in 2 sets of grade levels. This has made us an affiliate of the U.S. National AEFE network. The initials are for the French name, but in English, the name of the agency is French Agency for Education Abroad. Such accreditation is based on an extensive and thorough review and is not easily obtained. I want to emphasize here, slide 3, please. I want to emphasize here two aspects of the French tradition in children's education. One, a rigorous systematic approach to curriculum and pedagogy, exemplified in the ILA curriculum based on French guidelines. You can find examples of this systematic rigor by visiting the ILA website, clicking on academics, and then on curriculum. The other tradition is inherited from some of the great French philosophers of education, including the 16th century essayist Michel de Montaigne, and the 18th century, and in the 18th century, Jean-Jacques Rousseau's writings on education. This is a tradition emphasizing encouragement of independent inquiry, creative and critical thinking, an emphasis on values, and on the development of the child's capacity for independent judgment. Again, creative and critical rather than on rote memorization. ILA's curriculum and pedagogy treat these two traditions not as in opposition, but as in a complementary functional relation, where what might seem like opposing educational philosophies actually support and balance each other. Another aspect of the school's philosophy is its commitment to helping children develop respect for their natural environment, teaching them elementary aspects of ecology, respect for sensitive lands and wetland areas, and encouraging a cultural awareness of sustainable management of natural resources. The physical education part of our curriculum incorporates these principles through outdoor activities on our own campus and in field trips. Since the purchase of the school property last year, we've been negotiating with the Lake Oswego Community Development Department on our CUP application and on our response to a notice of violation relating to sensitive lands and to the unpermitted bridge on our property, which was just discussed. We contracted with Mason, Bruce, and Girard to delineate and report on the ecology of our forested area. The delineation revealed that our existing playground is situated on sensitive wetland and is therefore not usable in the way it has been used in the past. We came to an agreement with the city to engage in a massive mitigation project that will allow us to continue using this area for outdoor student activities. The project will require many volunteer hours from our wonderful parent-student community as we create something that belongs to all of us, the school, and to our surrounding neighborhoods. This will provide empirical evidence and true meaning to our claim that we are a green school. Slide 5. I want next to refer briefly to something I know has been of concern to our immediate neighbors in the Uplands and Lake Grove communities. The matter of how our request for increased enrollment will impact traffic and parking. Rick Nyes, my colleague here, will talk in a more informed and in a comprehensive way about the technical aspects of this matter. I want briefly to say something about our intentions with respect to a more ethical regard for our relations with our neighbors. We are committed to a collaborative and cooperative relationship with residents of these neighborhoods. Our CUP application already indicates measures we are taking to monitor drop-off and pickup of students in the early morning and late afternoon by queuing cars and staggering their entry and departure to and from our parking lot. The CUP application also mentions a plan in the works to avoid the traffic and parking congestion previously affecting the neighborhood when we held events such as our annual graduation, when larger groups of family and friends of the students have gathered at the school. Our plan is now to rent facilities elsewhere for such large gatherings. These efforts at mitigating impact of increased enrollment on the immediate neighborhoods will require periodic communication and meetings with the neighborhood associations, and we are committed to such communication and collaboration. To conclude my remarks, we have had a decade of success in offering this rather unique educational opportunity for young children, and now, after having purchased the Hope Church property, we feel ready and able to provide such an unusual educational opportunity to more children. I think it is fair to say that our responsible and conscientious effort in preparing the CUP application, aided by the number of companies and individuals with expertise in such areas as environmental and ecological management and oversight, in traffic and parking analysis and mitigation, etc., is evidence of our commitment to such collaborative leadership with the neighborhood associations, with volunteer organizations devoted to stewardship of local habitats and ecologies, with city officials, and with the local and regional business community. I want to thank all the individuals, the city, and the companies they represent for their extraordinary assistance as we work through this process. This list of names is too long for the time remaining, but some are here tonight. Evan Franstead, Evan Franstead, Senior Planner and our main contact for the project. Jessica Numanoglu, Deputy Community Development Director. Alexander Jokic, Chair of the ILA Board, who's sitting behind me. Our architect, Jeff Urban, who'll be on the screen shortly. And our traffic engineer, Rick Nice, who joins me in this presentation and to whom I'll now turn the microphone over.
Thank you, Don. My name is Rick Nyes, and I'm a traffic engineer with Greenland Engineering here in Lake Oswego. I've been a resident of Lake Oswego for the past 12 years and also work here. I also have been a traffic engineer for the past 24 years, both in the public and private sectors. I also had the great opportunity to be part of the Lake Oswego Transportation Advisory Board for 6 years and chaired that group for a number of years. I've also had the opportunity to work with a number of schools within Lake Oswego and other communities in helping them with their traffic circulation issues. I submitted a letter dated today that responds to a number of the Uplands Neighborhood Association comments that you saw earlier. And I'll note that I was not disappointed when you canceled the last meeting because I was stuck on a bus trying to get here until about 8 p.m. So good to be with you here tonight. So this project involves an increase in students from 50 to 150 students, and I've included the trip increase based on the number of increase in students. We completed our traffic counts at subject intersections in the summer of 2021. That was when school wasn't in session, but I'll note that we did account for all 150 students as part of our traffic analysis, even though school wasn't in session at the time. That was something that the Neighborhood Association noted, and I just wanted to confirm that we correctly addressed that issue. We also used city-provided traffic counts in considering the impacts of the pandemic, as well as regional traffic growth, as well as approved development within the city of Lake Oswego. Again, this was an issue that the Neighborhood Association raised. We studied 5 intersections as part of our traffic impact study. All of them had no issues with the exception of one, which is you've already heard about tonight, the Boones Ferry Twin Fir Road intersection, which I will talk about more here in a second. We've talked a little bit about the level service standards in Lake Oswego. The level service standard for an unsignalized intersection is level service E, which allows up to 50 seconds of delay. So Chair, you'd asked about when does it trigger level service F, that's over 50 seconds. And under 2021 existing conditions, we found that intersection, Boones Ferry Twin Fir, was already operating with over 100 seconds of delay for making that westbound left turn from Twin Fir Road to travel southbound on Boones Ferry Road. So it was already having significant problems. So looking at that issue and knowing that we're adding a good amount of traffic related to the school, mitigation was necessary. I evaluated the need for a traffic signal. Mr. Farley talked about that earlier, and we found that a traffic signal was not warranted at that intersection, and there were 4 reported crashes at the intersection from 2012 to 2021. So there's definitely not a robust history of traffic crashes at that intersection. The option we moved on to was a 2-way left turn lane, which is sometimes difficult to explain, but if you look at your screen, I will show you what how a 2-way left turn lane operates. Westbound left turns from Twin Fir Road will turn into the center lane. Once they find a gap in northbound traffic, they'll queue in the center lane and then wait for a gap in the southbound traffic and then merge over to travel southbound. That's known as 2-stage gap acceptance. And in this case, it makes a very big difference for the capacity of the intersection. This was something that we analyzed and found that it reduced the delay to about 45 seconds per vehicle at the upper limit. So we were, during the weekday AM and midday, we were at level service D, and then level service E in the weekday PM peak hour. It's been noted that that work has already been completed. The city of Lake Oswego, as part of their Boones Ferry Road paving project, completed those improvements. This was something that the neighborhood association brought up as an issue. Again, we use the national standards for analyzing these types of intersections. We use the Highway Capacity Manual. Will every driver use this two-way left turn lane? No, but many, many drivers will do that. And the methodology is based not just on theory, but based on empirical data, empirical observations of driver behavior at these types of intersections. Next up is parking needs. We're reducing the overall parking stalls to 46 stalls. The code requirement, just looking directly at the code, would be 39 stalls, but as noted earlier, there is a minor overlap between church activities and school activities, so we were required to provide a parking study. We found that there was only a peak church parking need of 10 vehicles, and that's on a Sunday, but during the week, the church-related parking need is only 2 stalls. We also found that there was a need to accommodate 15 stalls for school staff, which leaves 29 stalls for parents and guardians or other visitors during when the school's operating. So noting that that's not really enough to accommodate all of the pickup and drop-off activity, we decided to create basically a traffic management plan to accommodate these pickup and drop-off times. So, as already noted, we'll be changing the circulation from a one-way counterclockwise around the site. The eastern driveway is an ingress only, and the western driveway will be egress only. In the weekday AM peak hour, the pre-K and K students are already staggered from start times for the grades 1 through 5. There's already a half-hour stagger. We'll retain that stagger. As noted earlier, there's 29 available parking stalls during that weekday AM peak hour drop-off period. In the AM peak hour, we'll allow door drop-offs, which isn't something that's currently happening. So on the east side, we'll allow pre-K and K drop-offs. On the west side, we'll allow grades 1 through 5 drop-offs. With those drop-offs and the queue storage that's provided on site, and there's enough space on site where vehicles can queue against the doors and provide another circulation lane to get around the building. With all of the available parking and the available queues, my most recent analysis illustrates that there's more than enough capacity on site to accommodate all the peak vehicles at the same time. In the weekday PM peak, well, not the weekday PM peak, but the main pickup time, there's actually far less traffic that comes on site at the same time, and only parents and guardians can only pick up their students by parking and then coming inside to collect their students. But again, there's more than ample capacity to accommodate all those vehicles on site. And again, my March 6th letter addresses all of those traffic-related issues that was raised by the Neighborhood Association. With the 5 minutes left, I'll turn this over to Jeff Urban, who is online.
Mr. Urban?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we see you and hear you.
Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and share screen here. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks, Rick and Don. Good evening, commissioners and staff. Thank you for your time and service here this evening. My name is Jeff Urban. I'm the architect working with and representing the ILA on their CUP application. I reside at 179-1 Conifer Drive here in Lake Oswego. We've only got a few minutes remaining, so I'm going to quickly run through some slides to further explain what we will be doing with the conditional, to meet the conditions of approval for our CUP application. How are we doing for time anyway? I can't tell from here.
You have 4 minutes, 10 seconds.
4 minutes, okay. Just to speak to the driveway approach aprons that were talked about briefly earlier. These 2 aprons would be taken out and replaced to meet ADA standards, and I'll get to that in a photo here in a minute. Another condition of approval is the 10-foot setback for a future trail system along here. And another one is to replace a street tree that's missing here that came down in a storm a couple of years ago, and so we'll be replacing that. Other improvements to the parking lot would include chip sealing and restriping the parking lot, adding striping, as Rick was pointing out a little earlier, reconfiguring some stalls, and applying, directional graphics as you see here. The west driveway is from 1974 when the original church was built. This slope here is quite steep across here, so there'd be a problem for wheelchairs across here, so that'll be replaced, and the grade behind here will be modified to accommodate that. This is a 1996 entry here when this addition was built onto the church, and so it's better, but probably not quite compliant, but again, we'll be verifying all that, as Evan said earlier. This is the broken off Oregon maple that will be replaced with a new tree. It's trying to stay alive, but it's probably not going to make it. Other quick improvements will be re-landscaping this. This is all not required, but just something the ILA is going to do to spruce up the place. Replace the landscaping here and replace the fencing around the playground, which is chain link currently, with a nice ornamental iron fence. You've all seen this plan before, the mitigation plan, and the removal of invasives and planting of wetland and RP zones is already underway, especially in the city encroachment area, which are these areas here. It's important to reiterate that the bridge, the clearing, the cyclone fencing, and the encroachment on city land were all existing prior to the beginning of the ILA's tenure on the property. That said, the ILA is committed to resolving all the violations in this area, including a new bridge and mitigation efforts required now and for as long as they are owners of the caretakers of the land going forward. Zooming in on the bridge area, here's the new bridge proposed location, the existing bridge. The new bridge will go in before the old bridge is taken out, so this one remains functional. This will be a gravel and soil ramp here with plantings on both sides. This cyclone fencing in the wetland area gets removed along with the play equipment. And this is a new fenced area that is allowed in the RP zone. And it just, the archery goes away and all that. So under the bridge, we'll be submitting the permit plans for the bridge this week. This is a snapshot of one of the drawings. As you were talking about earlier, the new bridge spans much better the floodplain. This line right here is the high water line. So this new bridge will greatly improve the condition there. This is an example of what the new bridge will look like, a prefabricated bridge by Western Wood Structures. And the new bridge will be craned in as this one was on top of new concrete abutments on both sides of the creek. The new bridge will be sitting right here, and this bridge gets taken out when that one's finished. These are the concrete culverts that you were talking about earlier that come from the 1920s logging operation. It is proposed. They cause erosion of the embankments when these get plugged up with debris. So we're going to use Western Wood Structures crane to lift these out as part of this project.
Time.
Okay, well, I'll just go ahead and call that wrapped up then. Does anybody have any questions on anything directly for me?
Commissioners, do you have questions of Mr. Urban? Or Mr. Nice, or Mr. Wayne? I had a question of you, Mr. Nice. Did I understand correctly that you were anticipating a double queuing of cars, 2 lanes of cars queuing for pickup and drop off?
Not queuing. The one side would be for queuing and the other side would be for circulation around those queued vehicles to the right.
Oh, I see.
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Wayne, if I understood correctly, I believe you mentioned the prospect of having regular meetings with the neighborhood association. What is your anticipation of that schedule and how would that occur?
Well, as far as schedule, I think that's something to discuss with
The microphone
officers.
working?
Oh, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
As far as
That's better.
schedule, I think that's something we would have to discuss with the officers of the neighborhood associations and work something out, that's mutually convenient and also, I think probably we should have a preliminary meeting to talk about how we're gonna do this, because I don't think it's been done in the past, and I think it's something that's important to be done, and, we're committed to doing it. We had a meeting with 3 representatives, one a former president of Uplands Association, the other the current president of Uplands Association, and the vice, whatever his title is, Brian Farr, I think is his last name. That was a very fruitful, I thought, a very fruitful discussion. They wrote a statement, and they had a lot of reservations, which may come up for discussion regarding the traffic issues. But on the whole, I think that they wrote a very supportive statement about our proposal, and I think we are seriously wanting to maintain a not only cordial but collaborative working relationship with them.
Well, I appreciate that. Any other questions of the applicant at this time? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have persons signed up who wish to testify? Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to call up Allison Reynolds and Brittany Bersani, whom I understand have signed up to testify in support, if that's okay, City Attorney. Okay. Please come forward. Thank you.
Sure. I'm Allison Reynolds, but I am just the land use attorney working with the applicant. So I just signed up in case I was needed for anything, but don't have any specific testimony. But if you guys have questions on any legal issues, I'm here.
Okay, thank you very much. We may have something in rebuttal, if any.
All right.
Brittany Bersani or Don Irwin. Is Don Irwin here? Miss Irwin? Sebastian Bonar. I apologize if I mispronounced that. Please come forward. Welcome, and please state your name for the record.
My name is, the microphone is on. My name is Sebastian Bonart. I'm one of the parents of a couple kiddos that go to the school. I'm a civil construction inspector, and I work for the Port of Portland. And I am here to, I believe, read a letter that was submitted to the city of Lake Oswego. This lady, Mary Ann Dixon, is not able to join us this evening because she is actually on a ski trip that the school sponsors for kids grades 1st through 5th grade. So I will read this letter. It says, Dear Johanna Haste, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. I understand a hearing on the International Leadership Academy's conditional use permit, file number LU 220029, has been continued from February 22nd of this year to March 6th of this year. Unfortunately, I will not be able to attend the hearing to provide my comments in person, but I understand that I may provide written comments to you via email. The International Leadership Academy is a unique and special school that deserves the city's support. It is the only French language immersion school in Lake Oswego and is fully accredited by the French Ministry of Education and received high levels of distinction from Cognia, which was mentioned earlier. It was recently named one of the top private schools in Lake Oswego, and my understanding is that was from Coin News, and has one of the most culturally and ethically diverse staff of any school in the area. But its strong academic curriculum alone is not what truly makes it stand out. The best part of the school is that it fosters a well-rounded, diverse, loving community. All families are required to volunteer at least 15 hours a year as part of their agreement to join the school, and most of us do more than that because of our love and enthusiasm for it. It is one of the reasons we have a strong, inviting school community and spirit. Our daughter is in the 4th year in ILA, and she is thriving. She absolutely loves coming to school and learning. She loves her teachers and the staff. She loves playing in the school's forest play area with her friends, which is a welcome change from screen time. We believe her growth and success are not just from the school's excellent curriculum, but also from the love, care, and attention the school and its teachers provide. There are so many studies that show there is a connection between emotional relationships and learning. Emotion assigns value to things. It tells you want to pay attention to, what to care about, what to remember. If you don't care about something, how can you expect to give it enough attention to master, especially when it is difficult? Students learn best from people they love, and ILA puts a strong emphasis on the student-teacher relationship. Our city should support such a loving, caring institution that tremendously benefits its youngest citizens. Lake Oswego has no other French immersion school to offer its citizens such culture and diversity. ILA has been a treasure to Lake Oswego for well over a decade, and the city should do everything in its power to support it. Granting the conditional use permit would not place a burden on the community, but have the opposite effect. It would alleviate some of the burden the Lake Oswego School District is experiencing due to the increasing number of families moving to our wonderful city. And it is signed off. Thank you for your time, Mary Ann. And I will just add that, yes, like I said, a couple of my kids go to school there. They've been there for approximately, one of them 6 years and the other one a few years. They absolutely love it. My wife and I absolutely love it. And we feel that it's a very good school and that it's important to have kids learn other languages. And so this is the reason that our kids go to school there. Thank you.
Well, thank you for being here this evening. Any questions, commissioners? Thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you.
And now I would like to call Tracy Hansen, please, forward. Speaking in support of the application. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for having me. I am excited to be able to express my love and compassion and experience that I have at ELA, affectionately known as ELA, the International Leadership Academy. I am a mother and a grandmother. My name is Tracy Hansen. I live at 16983 Canal Circle. My daughter, Olivia, attended the International Leadership Academy from the age of 3 to 3rd grade, at which point we transitioned her to the Lake Oswego Public School. And ironically, a foreign student, French-speaking student, was in her class. With permission of the parents, which is me and my husband, Olivia was asked to be the interpreter for this student. What a value this was to the Lake Oswego Public School to be able to have a French-speaking peer to be able to relate to a foreign student and invite that student to feel the love and compassion of our community. And it provided for Olivia the opportunity to expand her experience in the French language and culture. So that was the first experience. And so you can see the asset that ILA is to not only our community, but to our public schools to have a valued partnership. Tonight, Olivia is now in 7th grade, pardon my voice, and she is actually singing in the choir with the middle school at the Lake Ridge High School. Well, what's unique about tonight is that they are singing a French song, and when the French song was presented to her class, the teacher asked if anyone spoke French or was from France. One student raised their hand. I have family from France. And then Olivia said, well, I am fluent in French. And so with that, her teacher asked her to assist in the correct pronunciation of the words and the meaning of the song, which I'm sure it went really well tonight with her assistance, and she was really excited about that. But not only that, we have traveled internationally before, and twice with Olivia, once in 2017, another time in 2019. And I can say I do not speak another language, so it was really, our experience was enriched with having our own personal interpreter, of someone to be able to speak fluently in French. And it really changed our experience overall in visiting another country. So the International Leadership Academy is not only a value to our community, but also can combine a real value partnership to our public schools and expanding growth and opportunity in cultural experiences and language. And I think we should embrace the growth. Just as we embrace the growth of our public schools, we need to provide the same growth and allowance for our private institutions and provide choices and opportunities for our residents and within our community, and we will all benefit as a community with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions of Ms. Hanson? Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Now I'd like to recognize Zeno Charles Marcel. Good evening.
Good evening.
Please introduce yourself for the record.
My name is Zeno Charles Marcel. I'm a helicopter pilot and a parent of a child in Ela. When my wife and I were looking for a place for our son to go to school, it was very important. We didn't feel like we would be able to find a place for him to go to school that kind of mirrored some of our cultural experiences. I grew up all across the United States and Mexico. I speak 3 languages. My wife is part German, part Costa Rican. She speaks 2 languages. And while we try to do that at home with our son, the ability for him to be in an environment where he got exposed to multiple languages, people from other places, was very important to us since school takes up a large chunk of his day. So we have found great benefit, particularly in he's 3, so particularly in the younger part of his life, we found great benefit from this school. And I don't think that there are many other opportunities like it. And so expanding that specific opportunity for more people, for more parents, I think would be a benefit and would only attract more people to Lake Oswego. That's all.
Commissioners, any questions for Mr. Charles Marcel? We appreciate your participation tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other witnesses in person or remotely who wish to testify in support of the application? Seeing none, I'd like to call forward Mike Moon. Good evening.
Good evening, council members. I think it's still a good evening. I hope so.
Please introduce yourself for the record.
Okay, my name is Mike Moon. I live at 3270 Phyllis Court, of course, Lake Oswego. A little closer to the microphone?
Oh, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, there we go. Okay. My wife and I live at 3270 Phyllis Court. We're on the north side of this project. If you follow the creek around, we border the city's property. Say at the very outset, we're not questioning the quality of the school. They seem to be a very quality school. We're only questioning the validity of this project. So we want to get that straight right from the outset. I spoke in opposition to this proposed project in the meeting in July of 21. At that meeting, I spoke about the school using city property and some of my property as playgrounds for their students. At that time, I asked the developers if they knew their property, where their property ended and where the city property began. To my surprise, they said they didn't have a definitive knowledge of such. I see that in that same week, the city took a long look at what was the church property and found various infractions of city codes that I hear haven't yet been corrected. It's one of the things they say is going to be done in the future, but it's another thing to know that it's corrected before we go into any project. The concern that I had then, I still have, but even to a greater degree, for I still see the school using city and some of my property as an extension of their business. They've created a designated path for their property through the city land into my property, altering a bridge to finish their trail. I believe they've even into Mrs. Shove's property, which you'll hear probably next, who lives right next to me. I understand that the city land can be used as an occasional walkthrough, and I don't even complain when my property is used as an occasional walkthrough. But should the city property be used as an extension, an easement of a business? Should my property, because of its relationship to city land, be used by a business? What happens if a child is hurt on city property? What happens if it's hurt on my property? Who's liable? Has the city council made these accommodations to other businesses in Lake Oswego? And also, have you been willing to adjust the wetlands restrictions from the 30 feet to 15 to 20 feet that they're requesting? Has this been done to any other businesses in Lake Oswego? Can we as homeowners usurp public land as they're doing? Is that possible? You know, there's no homeowners on Phyllis Court or any homeowner with the land that borders this project that approves of this proposal. Not one. Now it all boils down to this. Does the ILA believe that they can continue to use land that's not theirs? So far it seems they do. It would seem that the ILA is making projections of how many students they think can accommodate is based upon the assumption that it's okay to seize public land. If they had to stay within the boundaries of their own property, the 3.5 acres, we believe that they could not adequately handle an increase of 3 times their current enrollment. Again, none of the homeowners adjacent to this property believe this proposal is viable, let alone the concerns that they have about the untenable traffic situation that will be caused at Trent Fur and the unreasonable level of noise that it would generate. We believe a vote against this proposal is really obvious. Thank you very much.
Any questions, Commissioners, for Mr. Moon? Which pre-existing conditions concern you? I think you mentioned pre-existing violations or conditions that concerned you on the property, if I heard you correctly.
The pre-existing, when they came to look at this is within the own, that we've seen within the own papers that the city has issued, that they came in and looked at the property, saw violations in the property itself.
So the ones that the city identified are the ones you're referring to?
Yeah, and as I think we were heard tonight, that those haven't been fully addressed, if at all.
Any other questions for Mr. Moon? Thank you very much. We appreciate your being here tonight.
Sure, thank you.
Mary Shove, I'm probably mispronounced that. Please come forward. And state your name for the record, please.
Is this on? I am Mary Shove. My property is also just north of the city property and also the church. I'm a little nervous.
Don't be, but please continue.
All right, well, at any rate, I've been living at my property for 27 years. When we purchased it, Rainbow Terrace, we had a half an acre of land that went down the terrace, backed up to the wooded area, and across there was a small community church. Our backyard was full of splendor, and we had the local fauna. We had many years of peace and quiet and relative solitude in our, what we call our natural sanctuary. But until 2020, we weren't able to fully appreciate the growing menace in our backyard and the impact that it has had on the peace and quiet of our home, our neighborhood, and the creatures around us. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to have pictures. So the international leadership is a business like others in that it functions, well, unlike others, because it functions more as an exclusive members-only club charging thousands of dollars a year in annual dues. I don't question that it has a good educational program, but it's business that's in a residential area, and it's not a business that's open to the public. And as was stated by the traffic impact study, that it's an unusual land use in that all of the traffic it generates is at the peak times. It's not a regular business that has traffic throughout the day. And this is one of the problems that the residents of Twin Fir are issuing. I mean, it's not only, it's been an impacted intersection for a while. They've wanted a light there for 30 years. It's just never been warranted. And it continues to not be warranted. So the basic concerns that we have are the noise. Yes, sorry, I must have been touching this. Freaking this out. Let's see, is this back or forward? I'm going forward. I want to go back. Sorry, I'm a little on the nervous side. So, all right. So, noise, traffic, stewardship, safety, and liability. Those are the big concerns that the neighborhood and certainly the people that live on the top of the area are concerned with. The noise. I have brought with me, and I will try and see if I can get this to function properly. Is this a snippet of noise that I thought, it's difficult on paper to understand what noise is really being generated at this school. So I don't know if this is going to come across, but I don't know if you'll be able to hear this. That's just a snippet. That goes on frequently, 5 days a week. During recess, when they were on city lands, it was much worse. So there's the yelling of the teachers. They take the kids into the woods and want them to scream as loudly as they can. I stopped it before we really got there. And then over the years, they've put the chicken coop with the roosters. They have a clanging of the bell. They've shot fireworks off down there. They've had amplified music with their summer camps. I've explained to them that this is the situation. The geography or the topology down there is really more like an amphitheater. And if you look at the lower one with the terrace involved, you'll see that the sound just filters up. Now that they have cleared effectively the stage, they've absolutely cleared the land down there of shrubs, ground cover, trees. It's just bare land, and there's no reason for the sound not to come up, and so it does. Tripling the enrollment of the students. They seem to think that there won't be an increase in noise. I think
your time is just about up, so if you could
yeah,
conclude.
okay. Oh, there you go. Oh, Mike was going to serve. Okay, I'm sorry. So, all right. So there's the noise. We used to have these deer that came in our land regularly, and I have not seen a deer on my land in months, if not better. So that's kind of sad. It's been an impact by these guys building construction playgrounds.
Your time is up at the moment.
Well,
but
there you go.
Thank you so much for taking the time to be here tonight and present your information. It's very helpful.
I would like to request that we leave the comments open for a week.
Thank you. We will get to that in a moment. In terms of leaving the comment period open. Are there other witnesses who wish to testify in opposition to the application, either remotely or in person? I would now like to recognize, if she's here, available still, Marilyn Hepler, who wishes to testify neither for nor against the application. Good evening.
Need to comment, see if I got this right. Again, my name is Marilyn Hepler. I work for Clackamas County Social Services. I previously owned and lived in the property directly behind the church, the ILA, 14850 Twin Fir Road. I now live on Rainbow Terrace, on Rainbow Drive. I think the school is great. I don't see any reason to go into lots of details about the quality of the school and that kind of thing. Kids are great. I like people being educated. School's always good to have in a neighborhood. First, I'll just, in regard to the noise, I know when I lived in the house on Twin Fir, I liked hearing the sound of kids playing, so I would think that if that would be certainly something to look at, and if we can just find a way to have the happy sounds, but that's a whole different issue. Noise complaints and stuff like that, I don't really think belong in this hearing tonight. My issue is one that I brought up a bunch of times with the city. It's in regard to the traffic on Boones Ferry. Now, at one point, someone within the city told me, and I don't know all the technical terms, I don't know all the rules, but when you measure the distance from one traffic light to another, and you look at how many pedestrian crossings are there, the current state of Boones Ferry is not meeting those standards at all, and that we most definitely need a safe pedestrian crossing. So I don't know about anyone else here, but if anyone here has attempted to cross from either Rainbow Drive or from Twin Fir Road and get to the other side of Boones Ferry, it's really dangerous. And even though, yeah, you could walk down the road to the crosswalk, the issue is this: most people don't. And the fact that they need to get from one side to the other and there's not a safe way to go, people will usually just opt for the easy way. And I do. And it's dangerous. And I always hope I won't die there, but if I do, I want it to be quick. Now, one thing to consider, there is a really great staircase that leads up into, I don't remember the name of the neighborhood, but it's the neighborhood where Carmen Drive ends. It's a really awesome staircase. It's a great way to get over to Westlake. Now, my guess is if there was a safe and practical way for parents with their kids to cross, more people would be walking. That means fewer cars. I understand everything that everyone said tonight about whatever traffic studies and whatever has happened. I stand that we need a safe crossing. Now, if that's a traffic light, if it's a catwalk going over Boones Ferry, if it's a crosswalk, if it's a roundabout, whatever, we really, this is the time. We are gonna have more traffic with the increased enrollment. We're gonna have kids. We need it to be safe. That's all I have to say, so thank you.
Any questions for Ms. Hepler? So Ms. Hepler, when you're talking about a pedestrian crossing, you're meaning across Boones Ferry?
Across Boones Ferry, yes, yeah.
There at the Twin Fir intersection?
Yeah, and keep in mind also, there's a bus stop. So now there's a bus stop for bus 38 right at Rainbow and Boones Ferry. And so then across the street on the opposite side, there's another bus stop for I think, it's 37 and for bus 38. So for people who are commuting, which is by bus, which is a good thing, right? We want fewer people driving, we want fewer gas exhaust fumes in our air. So it's really difficult for them to make good use of public transportation. And I know in the past, lots of people would say, oh, we want a traffic light at Rainbow. And I know when the city did studies, it said the most practical place for the traffic light would be at Twin Fir. And also, even if there was a traffic light there, that would make it a lot easier for people to get in and out at Rainbow. So please, let's look at that.
Thank you for your testimony. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to testify neither for nor against the application this evening? Hearing none, I think we'll move to rebuttal. Would the applicant wish to provide any rebuttal this evening?
Talk about some of the comments that Ms. Hepler just made. I'll note that Mr. Farley with the city of Lake Oswego did mention that the city is looking at potential pedestrian crossing opportunities along Boones Ferry Road. I think the question here is the applicant responsible for such a situation? The city's standard is level service E at the Boones Ferry Twin Fer intersection, and do the improvements that have been made, that standard is met. There is a pedestrian crossing traffic signal warrant, but based on the pedestrians that are present today, there isn't any way that traffic signal warrant would be met at that intersection. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other rebuttal?
Sure. This is Allison Reynolds. I'm land use attorney with Stoll Reeves and counsel to the applicant. We just wanted to address the request to leave the record open. My understanding is that you will be granting that since this is the first evidentiary hearing. If that is going to occur, we would request a 777 where we would have essentially 7 days for new evidence, 7 days for responses to that evidence, and then 7 days for the applicant's final written argument. However, if we aren't going to be back for another 30 days, so it would be essentially 28, we'd like to see that additional 7 days go, or I guess the additional time, go to the evidentiary period.
Did you have a comment, City Attorney?
Yeah, let me respond to that. So, make sure at the top of the stop clock. Our typical practice is 7 days for, if we're going to do written argument, 7 days for final written argument, 2 days, 2 days for rebuttal, okay? Which that takes it then, 7 days takes it to the next Monday.
Yep.
Rebuttal takes it then to, rebuttal, additional evidence would take it to Wednesday. Okay. That gives staff time to kind of put a memo together for the 20th, okay? And at that time, if you haven't already, we would ask you if you wanted to submit final written argument.
Okay.
If you can get final written argument in beforehand, and just, obviously the sooner the better, but that's not subject to the 7 and 2, okay? Then we would proceed on with the 20th. If you want to ask for additional time and extend the 120, fantastic.
All right, I like that, if we stick with the 20th.
Okay.
I think that's good. That works, what you outlined, so thanks.
As the attorney for the applicant, did you have any comments regarding the thought that the applicant is using city property for its operations?
Yeah, I am not well versed in exactly what is going on with that, but I would say that the appropriate time for someone to raise those complaints would be in a question about enforcement and whether or not the city property is being appropriately used or not, and I would say that's probably well directed to the city's, either their Parks Bureau or the Planning Department. As far as I understand, the application that we are asking you to authorize tonight would be just to increase the student enrollment for the school to accommodate 150 students, and then to allow the various things we were asking for in the sensitive area.
Does the applicant have any further comments about concerns expressed regarding noise?
Yeah, I think that We agree with the evaluation in the staff report that Mr. Franstead put together. One of the things that I think was important that he noted was that when you're evaluating whether or not a use has impacts that are too substantial and might require mitigation, one of the things the city looks at is what would be allowed in the zone without a conditional use permit. And in this case, a preschool is an allowed use. It's both an existing use of the site, but it's also one that could be allowed at a sort of larger scale than it is right now. And we think that to the extent that there are concerns about, children, noise of loud talking by children, that is the identical kind of impact that you would see from a preschool, which is an allowed use. And so we just do not see this as a concern that is addressing the approval criteria. I believe there are several things that were mentioned as specific concerns, and I believe just from the applicant team that, for example, use of a megaphone, I think that may have happened once. It's not a typical practice. It's not something the school does or expects to do regularly. So I think that's just what I would say on that, that we have worked with staff and that noise does not seem to be a concern. One other thing to point out too that I think was also in the staff report was that the use of the outdoor area, it will increase in that there are sort of staggered use by groups of children of that area. And if there are more children, there will be sort of greater numbers of periods, but it will not be a larger group of children that's using these same areas at the same time. So it will occur more often during the day, but that sort of, child noise that is associated with children playing outdoors is not necessarily going to be greater because there aren't more children outdoors at the same time, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Any other questions by commissioners of the applicant in rebuttal?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Excuse me, before we lose the witness, she made a statement that the preschool was an authorized outright permitted use.
I believe so. Mr. Franstead, is that the case?
No, preschools require conditional use.
I'm sorry about that.
Daycares are permitted.
Okay, yes, I meant I meant a daycare. I'm right in that transition period with my son where it was a daycare and now it's sort of, I guess, preschool. But yes, I think the same argument, and I apologize for misspeaking, would apply to a daycare with outdoor use, which is a typical sort of thing you would find there, as would to a school at an older age.
Okay, we're still clarifying what is a permitted outright use relative to small people.
Preschools are a conditional use.
Okay.
That was what I just wanted to correct that.
And is daycare?
Daycare would also be a conditional use.
Okay. So, do we have anything with children that are outright permitted?
Well, there are certified or registered family childcare homes are outright permitted, but those are limited in the number of students and they're in private homes, which is not the case here. But they are correctly applying for a conditional use for the student enrollment that they're proposing.
Right, but for the analogy purposes of outright permitted on a conditional use, the analogy should be with a child care home.
That could be one of them, yes.
Which would be in the house, okay.
Very good. Thank you very much for your participation this evening. City Attorney Boone, is this an opportunity for us to ask additional questions of staff? Or are we now going into?
Well, you certainly can ask staff questions at any time.
Thank you.
But a request has been made to leave the record open. So the question is whether you want to, get all the evidence in before you ask questions. It's totally, you can ask.
Very good. What decisions, if any, do we have to make on keeping the record open?
Well, since the request has been made to leave the record open, we have to decide whether it's going to be for written testimony only or whether it would be for oral and written testimony. Okay. As we know at the bus barn, okay, we know what the oral and written testimony means. All right, that means it's basically a redo You're going to hear people, both people who have testified tonight or new people may come forward. Okay.
Yes.
If there is any new evidence that's admitted, then there's an opportunity to request yet another extension for the rebuttal of the new evidence. So the question again to you is, do you leave it for written evidence only, which would be the usual practice, as I indicated, is 7 days, 2 days for responding to any evidence that's submitted in the 7-day period, and then come back and review just the written evidence at your next meeting and ask questions of staff and deliberate? Or do you want to proceed with another continued public hearing? Okay.
Thank you. We have had a request to keep the record open. Commissioners, what is your feeling about, my inclination would be to open it just for additional written testimony. What do commissioners feel?
I think written testimony would be sufficient.
I would agree with that.
I think the consensus is to open just for written submissions.
Okay. So in preparation of a motion, then, any person may submit new evidence, new testimony, by close of business Monday, the 13th? Sorry? Yes. By the 13th, and any material responding to that new evidence that is submitted by the Monday, the 20th, would be submitted by the 15th, the Ides of March, by close of business. And then staff would put together a summary memo, trying to get that out to you by Friday noon, typically. And then the hearing would be continued for deliberation purposes only for Monday, March 20th.
I so move. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Do we need to call the roll on this? Please call the roll.
Arthur?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Poinsett?
Yes.
Sangre?
Yes.
Lyons?
Yes.
Dews?
Yes.
6-0.
Thank you. Any other business tonight?
But if
on
I
LU?
may admonish the folks who would be planning to submit new evidence, fine. On the 2-day rebuttal, that's only to respond to the written materials that are submitted by the 13th, not to anything, that's brought up today in this testimony. So it is limited to the record, if you will, on the 13th. Any questions? I'm sure Senior Staff Planner Evan Franstead would be happy to go over that.
I have a question
Yes, please.
of staff, and maybe we don't have to answer it tonight, but maybe while I'm still thinking about it, we can may give staff an opportunity to respond at some point in the process. Is who determines for schools that the mileage drops down to like 20 with the yellow lights? And because I'm just curious, does that apply to only public schools or private schools, or who decides?
What is a school zone?
What's a school zone and when it operates? Because, I mean, I can't imagine Boone's Ferry ever putting yellow lights because traffic would just come to a halt. But then I would think maybe on, I guess that's Twin Fir, might be a possibility, because I read in the report that it was 25 there. So you don't have to answer now. Maybe we can get back to the DRC on that.
Staff can submit that by close of business Monday. Engineering staff, traffic people. Okay.
And the reason I asked the question is because in the report, I think the way I read it was that the site address is on Boone's Ferry. So I was thinking, how do we put a school zone on the site address versus on Twin Fir? So how does that work? So thank you.
Any other comments to that? Any other business we need to conduct relating to LU 22-0029? Very good. We'll leave the record open as per the motion. What, if anything, do we need to discuss on schedule review and management update, please?
Not too much. I just want to remind you that the council appeal on the bus barn is happening tomorrow. If you want to tune in, will certainly update you on the outcome of that. We do have, as you know from tonight, a hearing on the 20th. And in addition to this continued hearing, we have one other item, which is the rebuilding of the Lake Oswego Middle School that will be before the commission. That is all we have on the schedule as of right now. And just so you know, after the next hearing, Ms. Hasty will be taking over for my role just while I'm interim director, as I discussed at the last meeting. Yeah, that's all I have.
What time is the city council meeting tomorrow? Do you know?
It starts at 4 p.m. However, they won't start the appeal hearing until 5 p.m., so they'll take care of other business between 4 and 5.
Okay. Thank you. Any other business we need to address
Jessica,
tonight?
what does our schedule look like as we go beyond the 20th? How about our next several meetings? Do you have
Well, we should have a meeting, the first meeting in April, because you'll have findings to adopt at the very least. But at this point, we don't have any other items scheduled. We have incomplete applications. So it's just as a reminder, when someone submits an application, if it's incomplete, they have 6 months to make it complete. So it can be unpredictable during those 6 months when the person is going to submit the missing information so we can schedule the hearing. So unfortunately, I don't know beyond the first meeting in April at this point.
That's good. Thank you.
If there's no other business, then we'll adjourn the meeting this evening. Thank you very much. We're adjourned.